Chapter 4. The Price of Success. The walk back from the warehouse was a study in contrasts. Leo Gable, who had entered the meeting looking like a man on his way to the gallows, was now practically vibrating with manic energy. He was alive, he was not in Azkaban, and he was now in business with one of the most feared dark wizards in the country. To him, this was a victory of epic proportions. "I can't believe it," Leo kept saying, running a hand through his greasy hair. "You faced him down. You drank the whole vial, and the crates. The timing on that, Professor. That was the most brilliant, insane thing I have ever seen." Alistair, however, felt none of Leo's elation. The golden warmth of the Felix Felicis had long since faded, leaving behind a chilling residue. The familiar ache in his bones had returned, a grim reminder of the clock that was perpetually ticking inside him. The potion had given him a glimpse of what it felt like to be powerful, to be in control, to be lucky. But the return to his bleak reality was a fall from a great height. He had not just made a business deal, he had performed for a monster, and the monster had applauded. "It was a calculated risk, Mr. Gable, not a performance," Alistair said, his voice flat. He could still feel the phantom weight of Corvus's hand on his shoulder, a gesture of partnership that felt more like a brand of ownership. Do not mistake a successful gambit for a sustainable strategy. Men like Corvus are not partners. They are predators. We have merely proven we are more useful to him alive than dead. For now. They reached the camper van, a ridiculous island of beige and rust in the encroaching darkness. Inside, the remaining vials of blue potion glowed with a cold, ethereal light. They were no longer symbols of hope. They were now obligations, the first tribute owed to a violent new king. The first delivery was made the following night. Leo, acting as the go-between, met one of Corvus's cronies in a deserted alley off Diagon Alley. He exchanged a satchel containing 50 vials of the blue liquid for a heavy enchanted bag. There was no conversation, no negotiation, just a silent, tense exchange of contraband for cash. When Leo returned to the camper, now hidden in a new location, a foggy thicket in the New Forest, he placed the bag on the workstation with a heavy thud. Alistair untied the enchanted drawstring. Inside, nestled in velvet lining, were stacks of gold galleons, more than he had ever seen in one place. It was a fortune. It was enough to pay off his mortgage, to pay for his son's entire Hogwarts education, to ensure Eleonora would be comfortable for the rest of her life. It was everything he had set out to achieve. He reached in and picked up a coin. It was cold and heavy. He looked at the stern goblin face stamped on the gold and felt nothing. There was no relief, no sense of accomplishment. There was only the hollow ache of a compromise so profound he feared he would never be clean again. The money changed things, just as Alistair knew it would. For Leo, the change was immediate and obvious. He replaced his cheap, torn dragonhide jacket with a tailored one made of acromantula silk. He bought a new, top-of-the-line racing broom, a Firebolt Supreme, and took to flying it at reckless speeds over the desolate moors where they parked their mobile lab. He was no longer just Sparky, the small-time punk. He was a man with galleons in his pocket, a man with a connection to Corvus Lestrange. It gave him a swagger, a dangerous confidence that made Alistair deeply uneasy. "We need to be careful, Mr. Gable," Alistair warned him one afternoon as Leo was polishing the absurdly expensive broom. "Such ostentatious displays of wealth attract attention, the kind of attention we cannot afford." "Relax, Professor," Leo said with a dismissive wave. "I'm being careful. No one knows where the money is coming from. They just know I'm not a nobody anymore. It's called building a reputation." For Alistair, the changes were internal and far more corrosive. He began the process of laundering the money, a task that required a different kind of alchemy. He couldn't simply deposit thousands of galleons into his Gringotts vault without raising suspicion. He had to be clever. He staged a series of fictitious wins in various wizarding pools and lotteries. A small win in the monthly Weird Sisters fan club raffle. A slightly larger one in the Chudley Cannon sweepstakes. He even fabricated a long-lost great aunt who had conveniently left him a modest inheritance. Each lie was a carefully placed stone, building a wall between his old life and his new one. The hardest part was facing Eleonora. He presented her with a bag of galleons one evening, telling her it was the result of a lucky long-shot bet on a goblin-run snail race. The lie felt like acid on his tongue. She looked at the money, her eyes wide. "Alistair, this is more than you make in a year. We can finally fix the roof. We can visit my brother in Vienna." Her joy, so pure and unburdened, was a physical pain for him to witness. He had saved her from poverty, but he had done so by dragging himself into a world of filth. He had become a stranger in his own home. He would spend his evenings in his study, Not reading history books but poring over illicitly acquired potion ingredient catalogs, planning their next brew. He was a ghost at his own dinner table. The secret he carried a chasm between him and the woman he loved. The cough was getting worse. Sometimes, in the middle of a delicate brewing sequence in the camper van, a fit would seize him, forcing him to grip the workstation until the spell passed. He was pouring his remaining life force into these glowing blue vials, and while they were providing for his family's future, he knew, with a terrifying certainty, that they were also accelerating his own demise. The product, which Corvus's network had branded Blue Magic, was an immediate and disruptive success in the wizarding underworld. It was unlike anything else on the market. A single drop could give a gambler the nerve to make an impossible bet, a duelist the split-second advantage to win a high-stakes match, or a petty thief the uncanny luck to bypass a complex security ward. Stories began to circulate in hushed tones in the Leaky Cauldron and other, less reputable establishments. They were whispers of impossible outcomes. A witch with no magical talent to speak of suddenly winning a prestigious underground arts competition. A down-on-his-luck potioneer stumbling upon a rare, undiscovered fungus worth a fortune. A wizard who had been on the losing side of a dozen duels suddenly executing a flawless, unbeatable string of victories. Alistair and Leo, insulated in their mobile lab, only heard about these successes secondhand. Corvus demanded more product, and they were forced to work on a grueling schedule. The camper van became a prison of their own making, filled with the constant bubbling of cauldrons and the cloying scent of magical ingredients. The initial thrill of their enterprise had faded, replaced by the relentless, monotonous pressure of production. One evening, as Alistair was meticulously measuring powdered moonstone, Leo burst into the lab, his face pale with something other than the cold. He was holding a copy of the Daily Prophet *. "Professor, you need to see this," he said, his voice trembling. Alistair took the paper. The headline was small, buried on page 5, but it made his blood run cold. Alluror Office Notes, Unusual Spike in Lucky Outcomes. The article, written by some junior ministry correspondent, was vague. It spoke of a statistical anomaly, a noticeable increase in improbable events, from long-shot Quidditch bets, paying off, to the sudden resolution of cold cases. It mentioned no specific product, no suspects, but it ended with a quote from a ministry official. While there is no evidence of widespread illegal potion use, the quote read, "The Department of Magical Law Enforcement is monitoring the situation closely. We urge the public to remember that any potion promising luck or fortune is classified as a Class A non-tradable substance. The penalties for brewing or distributing such items are severe." Alistair read the last sentence again. He could almost hear his brother-in-law Gideon's boisterous voice behind the words. They were being hunted. Not by name, not yet, but they had created a ripple in the fabric of the world, and the world was beginning to take notice. "This is bad," Leo whispered. "This is really bad. They're onto us." "They are not onto us," Alistair corrected him, his voice sharper than he intended. He folded the newspaper with a steady hand, though his heart was pounding. "They have noticed a statistical anomaly. They have no product, no witnesses, no leads. All they have is a theory. But for how long?" Leo shot back, his bravado gone, replaced by raw fear. "Corvus isn't exactly subtle, Professor. His goons are selling this stuff everywhere. It was only a matter of time before the ministry noticed something was up." Alistair knew Leo was right. He had created a perfect product, but he had entrusted it to a blunt instrument. Corvus Lestrange's distribution network was effective, but it was loud and messy. They had flooded the market, and in doing so, had created a pattern that was too obvious to ignore. He looked around the camper van, at the rows of cooling vials, at the bubbling cauldrons that had to be tended to. This was his life now, a fugitive, hiding in a tin can, creating magic for a madman, waiting for the inevitable knock on the door. The money, which had once seemed like the solution to all his problems, was now just fuel for a fire that was burning dangerously out of control. He felt a familiar tickle in his throat and turned away, bringing a handkerchief to his mouth to stifle the cough. When he pulled it away, he saw a small dark speck of red against the white linen. It was the first time he had coughed up blood. The shadow inside him was not just feeding on his magic anymore. It was feeding on his life. The clock was ticking, louder than ever.